where do you find God? Almost sounds like a loaded question, doesn't it? I mean, if God was someone you could find, wouldn't everyone be out searching? Well, rather than looking for something elusive, like a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, I reckon it's more about learning to recognise the way God is already present to us in our everyday lives. I'm Lizzie Oakes, and this is Where Do You Find God? My guest today is a fellow broadcaster here at Rima Media. He's one of the radio hosts of the Rima Breakfast Show. He's also a man with a marvellous singing voice and a very distinctive laugh. Good morning. Welcome, Andrew Curtis.
I like that. Very distinctive laugh. I don't know if I've been introduced like that before. That's lovely.
I hear your laugh across the broadcasting floor. There we go.
It does carry somewhat.
And it carries, and it has a little bit of a Woody Woodpecker thing in it.
Right.
This sort of little hammering thing that sort of happens. And I like listening to people's laughs, so there, you're making me laugh. Hey, outside of the heady world of broadcasting, radio and TV that you do, how do you like to spend your time?
Well, I am really much more of a homebody than I think people are surprised to hear, because I do love to be around people. I do love to have a good chat, but I'm very much about smaller groups of people. So if I can't just be with a small group of people, I mean, fortunately, my wife and I have a lovely relationship, so we like to spend a lot of time together. But, otherwise, I don't know, just little adventures around the city. We like to be able to go within walking distance of where we are in the Auckland CBD and just, find little places to eat and other little spots just to enjoy. So
because you're inner city dwellers, aren't you?
We are, yeah, absolutely. No gardens for us.
Yeah, I relate to that. Talking all week, not so much talking outside of work. Yeah. Smaller groups. Yeah. I hear you completely. Hey, so Andrew, in the Bible, in Acts chapter 17, verse 27, it says, God intended that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us.
Ooh.
So my question for you today is, Andrew, where do you find God?
You know what's great about a verse like that and a question like that is knowing what this conversation's going to unlock. It makes you think about it in a different way already. And so I had been playing around with this for a few days, knowing we were going to have this conversation, and we'll see how this connects, because the main thing that I was thinking about in terms of my journey of how I find God was more really about learning how to let God find me.
Nice.
And by that, I would say the biggest lesson was learning how to receive the love that God has for me. That was the hardest thing that I have done. All the way through, especially through my early 30s, mid-30s in particular, I always had a sense that God was real, going back to very, very young, but that sense that God loved me was very difficult for me to get my head around. I couldn't understand it outside of the context of the stuff that I was doing. So if I was ever in a situation where I had to stop and I couldn't do stuff, or perhaps worse still, if I felt like I'd somehow fallen short of the stuff that I was supposed to be doing, it was brutal. I mean, internally it was brutal. And so to go to bed at the end of the night was not something that I always looked forward to, because you'd be alone with your own thoughts and your thoughts about yourself. And then I think too, as time goes along and things don't always go to plan for you, and you start to reflect on why it might be that things are the way they are. And my default was always, well, I've clearly done something or not done something, and that's the reason why, which really was just building more and more of these barriers internally, I suppose, to being open to the love that God had for me. So that was the opening problem. I don't know. I could see some of that resonated with you as well. So what's coming to mind while I'm talking about that?
Well, I think a lot of people resonate. What you're talking about is that the sense of I have to live some kind of life, I have to reach some sort of level of performance. You're talking about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Whereas God's love is an unconditional thing, is based on the very fact that you are his son and you exist.
I realized a little while ago that the grace of God's actually really offensive. Like, it's really offensive. There's something about the human condition, even outside of church circles. One thing that I spotted a few years ago, and now I can't unsee it. Go through the news anytime something bad happens to anyone and see if the word deserve pops up.
Oh.
Because it will pop up. Someone will say they didn't deserve this person didn't deserve this to happen, How could this, that kind of thing. But this idea of what you deserve is so hardwired into our system. Even if you're outside of church circles, I'm talking here as well, we still look through the world with that kind of lens. And so often we think about it in terms of rewards, like if I do a good thing, then I should get a good thing back. But it can also undo us because we say, well, I've done the good thing. Where is my good thing back? If I'm getting the bad thing, what have I done to deserve this thing? So the whole economy, I suppose, the spiritual economy of do good things, get good things, do bad things, get bad things, you don't even need the gospel to understand that. Human nature understands that perfectly well.
Yeah.
So then to have this thing that comes along and says, by the way, love available for you, not because of who you are, but because of who somebody else is. And in some ways, it's the good things you don't deserve. Like that was, I wish I could bottle that moment and make it happen for other people. I think maybe the hardest thing I find today about the Christian walk is realizing that I can't make that happen for someone because I really would love to. Like if I could only, this thing that I fought for years to try and start to receive, this love that God has for me, if I could go to you and just unlock it, just click and bang, and it would just be the best. And I can't do it, and I hate that because I see so much about now in other people. That's what you're looking for because I see it in me, I see it in them, that same experience. But there is a moment of unlocking that has to come from the inside out, and you can't make it happen for somebody else. But it is the thing you need more than any other. And so for me, in terms of finding God, it's funny, isn't it? We use that term, and I understand the thinking behind it. But more often than not, it's, you suddenly find God, and where was he? Well, he was there the entire time.
Yeah.
It's not like you had to go on this journey to find him. Where has he been put? Is he, just over this brow of this hill? Is he just around the corner? It's more, oh, wow, he was actually here. So where was I? Where was I? So that was my journey of discovery, I suppose, to realize how close he really was. But it needed that God moment that, again, I wish I could make happen for others. You can have it. Everybody listening right now can have that. It's not something I can make happen for you.
Yeah. So, Andrew, what is it like to be found by God?
It is incredible. It is literally the best thing in the world. It is the best thing in the world. I've been in church circles since I was old enough to walk, and so I know enough about the Christian community that we can all grow up in, and that's great. It serves a purpose. But the difference between what my life was like internally in particular, before that moment and afterwards, it's the difference between knowing that something's the right thing to do versus experiencing the wonder of it. Like, I don't know, things like, hey, what could you do to be healthier? And everybody has 1,000 things that they know they could do. You could make a list right now, I'm sure, listening to this, of 10 things you could do, and then go through and say, okay, how many am I doing? You can live your life on a spiritual level like that as well. I should go to church, and I should pray, and I should give, and I should da-da-da-da-da. Versus the moment when you suddenly, it's like reading about being in love versus actually falling in love.
Yeah.
And to me, having that sense of realizing how close God was, when I really experienced that, you can't forget that once you've got it.
Yeah.
Like once I learned that, once I discovered that, finding out how close God really could be for me in every moment, it changed my outlook. It made me calmer. It made me more understanding of other people. It enabled me to absorb more of the slings and arrows that come at you from life, because you see how much people need. That's why I said I wish everyone could have the same thing that I've had, because I know a lot of the rough edges I see in people. It's like, mate, you just don't know how loved you are, and you really are. And all I'm hearing right now, you might say it's this, that, and the other thing in the government and society and whatever, and churches and whatever. I said, no, you just don't know that you are fundamentally loved at a level far deeper than you could imagine. And if you knew that, you'd suddenly find how many of these other things of yours are settled. But without it, we live in a much more painful world.
Yeah. So that God who's found you, and it's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
What is he like?
I'll tell you one of my favorite, what would you call it? I suppose insights, revelations, if you want to call it. You use that kind of word for it. So helpful.
He's so helpful.
So helpful. I grew up, you probably heard that phrase, the truth hurts.
Yes.
Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Everybody's heard that, right? The truth hurts. What I discovered was that the truth helps. More than it hurts, it helps. Because, there's verses, and if I could remember off the top of my head, I would quote it directly, but it talks about, the wisdom of God is at first peaceable and kind. And if you sit somebody down, or I'll put myself on this hot seat because this is how I realized it for myself.
Because it's about you right now.
Yeah. If somebody came to me earlier in my life and said, hey, do you want to know the truth about you? I would be like, no, that is the last thing I want to hear. Because why? Because I think the truth about me is I don't try hard enough. I'm not good enough. I'm a fraud. I'm all these things that are floating around. I thought that was the truth about me. Well, what actually I would have heard if I was open to hearing it was, you know what? You're not an accident. You matter. You're loved. You're perfectly understood. I want the best for you. I have amazing things for you. I have infinite time for you. Like, that is the truth. That is the truth. And that truth helps. So understanding that made me a lot more open to learning about these sorts of things. And it made me more willing to go to God with stuff as well. Because I think if you feel like, or again, making this my own story here, when I thought that going to God meant, okay, well, God's going to have to give me a kick up the pants because that's what I need. Incidentally, why do we use that abusive language all the time? Like, what is that about? Let's go to God, this loving Father, and believe that his role is to kick us up the pants because that's what love is. Come on. Anyway, if I thought that that's what that was, I have to psych myself up.
Yes.
You know, like, okay, I've got to go see this God now. It
takes a lot of courage, doesn't it?
I've got to go see him because he's going to give me a kick in the pants, but I need it. It's going to be good for me. Okay, here we go. God, what, you know. And even as I say that, I can reconnect with that emotion and that fear, even though I knew it was the right thing to do. It's like having a doctor's checkup, you know. Whereas instead, if I approach him right now, I'm going to hear the truth, but the truth is going to help. I'm going to discover something that I believe about me that isn't true, that's holding me back from the life that God really has for me. I can look forward to that moment. Whatever I'm going to hear is going to be helpful and good and kind and nurturing. Even if I do discover that I've made a mistake about something, there is never a sense of accusation or anger or just whatever that feeling is that comes up in you. Maybe when you've heard me talk about this, you know what it is for you. That is not the truth, the loving truth that I find when I come close to God. It's an affirming, safe place that also then helps me to be more like Jesus, which means I do become more of the kind of person that I want to be. But instead of it being like, if you don't measure up or, you know, I'm going to give you a kick up the pants to get you doing the right thing. It's more, hey, look, did you know that I love you? It's like, oh, wow. Energy changes. I'm calmer. I'm more gracious and peaceful with people. Wow, that's actually more like Jesus already. And I didn't even have to do anything. I just had to learn and be open and receive the fact that God loves me. Suddenly I'm more like Jesus, but not because I'm striving, because I'm experiencing and I'm open to it.
I didn't even have to do anything. I just had to learn how to receive.
Yeah.
Andrew Curtis, thank you for joining me today on Where Do You Find God?
My pleasure.
If you'd like to listen again, tune into Star each Wednesday morning at 10:30 or listen and subscribe via your favourite podcast app and give us a review so others can find us.